All right. Thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston, Massachusetts, and I have a special guest. I'm going to have him introduce himself to you all.
Good
Marvin.
afternoon. Sorry.
Okay.
It's been a day. It's been a month. I am Marvin Toliver. I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm co-founder of Melanated Social Work. I am a therapist with the Radical Therapy Center here in Philadelphia. I am a speaker, a guest lecturer, a radical educator, a mentor. Do a lot of things. So thank you for having me.
A jack of all trades.
Like
It's been a month. It's been a couple years with the pandemic too. You've been rocking these streets heavy. I've been following Marvin. Marvin don't play. So one of the things that I know you. I've been following you for a long time. I'm sure some of my audience knows you, but you started off in California because currently you're in Philly.
Yes.
And you started off in California. When you was born and raised, did you know you were always going to become a therapist?
Not a therapist. I always knew that I was a helper. I always loved to help people. Even in middle school, I was like, the person who was trying to get people to stop fighting or like trying to mend the relationships of my, middle school friends, the relationships that last for like a week or two. But yeah, so I knew I was a helper. I knew that it really brought me joy to help other people in whatever way that meant. And so it wasn't until later on, and so I actually moved from Oakland, California, where I'm born and raised, to Miami, Florida, and I started with an AmeriCorps program called City Year, and so I got a little bit more introduced into like social justice and different things like that. So, long story short.
Was City Year after high school? Was it like you didn't know if you wanted to go to college and you decided to join City Year?
So City Year was after undergrad. So I guess I skipped that. So undergrad, I went to San Diego State University, majored in communication, minored in sociology. And then after that, the job market at that time was horrible. So AmeriCorps seemed like it was a good idea. I could live in Miami. And so I joined City Year.
Okay. And so City Year, you were introduced to social justice. But prior to that, it wasn't really on your radar.
Not so much. I noticed differences, but I was still very much a people pleaser. I still very much wanted other people to see me not as the stereotypical Black man. And so I think that I shifted myself a lot to make other people comfortable.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
No. And so, yeah. And so I think at that time I was much more concerned with my image than actually like any issues or, doing any work or anything like that.
When you say image, kind of like, because you do a lot of work around decolonizing like life in general, mental health, everything. So when you say your image, you basically cater to white supremacy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. To whiteness, to capitalism, to patriarchy, to homophobia, to all those things.
Okay. What was the shift? Because you're like me hearing you say this is like, it's like I'm surprised because you're so outspoken now. Yeah. And I know that was not an overnight transition for you to go from this like meek, like get along, and I was like that too. I feel like I just kind of like stayed under the radar, respectability, politics, like all of that was so me. And what was the shift for you that made you kind of change?
Yeah, I think the shift was started out with realizing that my voice was powerful. When I was in City Year, one of my supervisors told me, he said, "When you speak, people listen." And I was just like, "What?" I'm just talking. What are you talking about? And so then I kind of realized, I was like, "Oh shit!" Like he's right. And so after that, I was like, okay, I have this voice. Like, what am I going to do with it? And so it started off as kind of being more as advocating more for, folks that, didn't have voices. And typically these are marginalized folks. And then I started struggling with like my own identity and I was always struggling with my identity. It didn't just, happen. I think I was always compartmentalizing and kind of pushing it to the side. And
Yeah.
so then, when I was in city year, actually, there was a point where I could feel in my body how stressed out I was.
Damn.
And a big part of that, like city year was stressful in itself, but a big part of that was my own struggle with my sexuality and my identity. And so that was the first time I went to therapy was actually in Miami. And the first time I had told anyone outside of like maybe one or two people that I was attracted to men. And I think that that wasn't the best therapist for me, but that was a freeing moment for me because in my brain, and for a lot of folks that are haven't shared that part of themselves about with folks, you think the world's gonna end. Like you think like if you like being found out is like the worst possible thing, especially for men, especially for Black and brown men. And so when I realized that didn't happen, like I said the thing and like, oh, we're all still here. I'm like, okay. And so then I had to start really talking about it. And then from talking about it, getting comfortable with it, from getting comfortable with it to like finding power in it and no longer shame in it. And so I think so that piece, that personal piece connected with the social justice piece that kind of started in city year and started to blossom more in grad school where I met the gentleman from Melanated Social Work. Then I really became passionate and really, started to use my voice and was like, you know what? I don't care what these white people say. I'm gonna say what the truth is. And if it makes them uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable, whatever.
And for people that may not understand, like how could one thought become so catastrophizing? Whether we're talking about someone's sexuality or anything in general, when you keep it in your head and it's surrounded by a lot of other negative thoughts, it becomes real.
Sure.
So you want to explain that for people that may not understand, like how could something in your head become so like end of the world for people?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think anything that's in your head, we start to like when it remains there. I like to tell my clients like it's like energy. Now, I can't, I don't have another word for it. People probably have other words for it, but I have the word I use is energy, and so it's pretty much anxious energy is what it was. It was extreme anxiety because I'm like, well, what if this happens? Well, what happens if? Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, there's a loud truck outside. So there's this anxious energy and it needs to get out because if it doesn't get out, it just stays in and you keep ruminating and ruminating. And well, what if this? Well, what if that? What if my friends leave me? What if my parents, disown me? What if, all of these negative thoughts, right? And so once it comes out, one, it becomes real because like it's out there, you've said it, especially when you say it to someone. The other thing is like, okay, now we can kind of shape how we think about whatever this thing is. And that's what, my therapist was really helpful with. It's like, okay, well, you said this thing, now it's out. Let's talk about it now. And so then what happens is that energy that was like all stuck in your brain is out. And so it doesn't take up that much space anymore because you talked about it now. It doesn't bring up any anxiety because like, oh, it's out now. I guess I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, that's good.
Not in the same ways anyway.
Not in the same ways, yeah. And we're going to talk about how you ended up on a TEDx. But one of the things that you talked about, just like kindergarten and just kind of growing up in a system that didn't promote vulnerability, especially for Black men, or asking questions like, "Are you gay?" And if you better not say you are, like, what when you look back at that, on top of not just your thoughts, but you had all of those experiences
Right.
that just validate. Well, it felt validating to you not saying. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's the other piece is that there's so many messages, right, from society that at that time too were telling me that everything connected with queerness was wrong. It was bad. It was disgusting. You should just stay away from that part. I also, grew up in the church, in the Baptist church. And so like, that was not something that was, it either wasn't discussed or it was discussed briefly and said, no, that's bad. That's wrong. Don't do it. No more conversation around it. Right. And so you get all of these messages telling you that you're wrong and you're bad, or that this thing is wrong and it's bad. And now I'm identifying with this wrong, bad part. And now I'm not, in my brain, I am bad. I am wrong. I am disgusting. Right. And so that was another part of like, you know what? I'm going to close my mouth. I'm going to just make nice with everyone so no one, focuses on me too much. And that's what I did.
Do you feel like shame played a huge role in like your life?
Of course. Shame silences us. Right. And so when we're ashamed of anything, and it doesn't have to be something as like sexuality or identity, even like if you owe somebody money, right? You owe somebody money, but you don't have it. But like, you don't want to say anything because you're ashamed of not having it, or you don't want to have a potentially negative outcome with another person. And so a lot of people just don't say anything, right? Because it's that shame that silences us. And so that definitely played a part. Shame and fear.
Yeah, those are huge ones for a lot of people, especially a lot of our people that we work with. And I think once we can work on identifying it, challenging it, not allowing it, because a lot of times we let that be the narrative and we don't push it any further. And then so many people like go to their graves that way and don't ever get to experience life.
Yeah.
So it's two things that are working challenging. Go ahead.
That was actually something that I always said. I was like, this is something that I'm going to take to the grave around my sexuality. Yeah.
So now you're at City Year. You decide to go to therapy. How old were you when you decided to go to therapy?
To go to therapy. That was 2011. What is that math? What is it now? 20. Sheesh, that was 11
years ago. We're not mathematicians.
Wait, hold on. Carry the one. Wait, hold on. I'm really got to do some math right now. I'm 30.
It's just me out of nosiness. I was like 24.
I was 23.
Okay, so we were around the same age.
Yeah.
Huge game changer. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you decided to go, and I think for me, I tell people it was because I think what happened was because I was always working school, and I finished undergrad, and now I'm like, I have all this time on my hand, and I think those thoughts just started coming in, and I was like, let me go to therapy.
Yeah.
So now you go to therapy, and what made you decide to go to grad school? Because you came to the best city in the world to go to grad school. What made you do that?
Woo, that is one person's opinion, which I will respect, but I will respectfully disagree. So actually, before moving to Boston, I went back to California for a bit, and I worked with a program called Job Corps, and I was an admissions counselor. And part of that process basically is recruitment is one part, and then you're doing interviews with the young folks to basically say, yes, you're good for the program, or no, you're not good for the program. And so they had questions that were kind of around that were really personal sometimes. And I would hear things like, oh, this gang jumped me because I wouldn't join. I heard, my uncle sexually assaulted me when I was this age. I heard, I've been homeless for, however long. And I'm just like, all I could do was either say, okay, you're in the program or you're not in the program. And so me as the helper, I'm like, okay, well, how do I, this program isn't going to help heal all the other stuff that's happening or that had happened in your past. So what more can I do? So that was always kind of in the back of my mind. At the same time, our leadership at Job Corps switched. And so we had new leadership, and they were absolutely terrible. Just like the worst type of leadership, had no idea what they were doing. And I was like, you know what? I need to get a master's degree because I need to be in charge. Because I can no longer work under stupidity, really.
Just say it like it is.
You can't do it. Yeah. And so, one of the women, a supervisor from City Year, said, you would really be a really good social worker. So I started to do a little bit more research. City Year also has this thing called a Give a Year partnership. And so if you give a year of service, they give you an education award. So I got about $10,000 off tuition, as well as $40,000 off of tuition as well. So, I mean, I still got loans, but it was a significant, it was a significant amount. And one of the schools was Boston College. At the time, I think we were the number 5 or number 6 social work program in the country. So I was like, cool, let's do it. And I'd gone to City Year. I'd gone to Boston before because City Year had its like a big annual, what's it called? Not retreat, but like an annual, like all the City Year sites across the country would meet in Boston. Because that's where the first City Year location is. I'm sure you know that.
Oh yeah, because I remember them when I was in elementary, and I remember I wanted to, because I was poor, but I wanted to be in City Year because they always had the Timbs.
Let me tell you though, Red Jackets and Timbs work in Boston. In Miami though,
oh okay,
sweating. 8 in the morning, sweat, just like, why are we doing this? Why do they have us do this? Yeah, so I went to Boston, Boston College in Chestnut Hill, very, very white institution. Social work schools are typically white women dominated. And so that's exactly what it was. And so often I'd be the only person of color. I'd be the only man of color in different classes. And
so you had that kind of like enlightenment in City Year. Yeah. Now you're in this master's program with primarily white people. Mm-hmm. Was there more awakening happening, or by that point were you did you feel like you was very radical, or were you not there yet completely?
By the time I was at Boston College?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think that radicalized me. we had the Graduate Students of Color Association. And so, folks of color in grad school just came together just to be in community with each other. And that was incredibly helpful for me in just like existing in Boston and living in Boston. And so that's where we had a lot of conversations around like the problematic things that, students were saying, that professors were saying, that we were seeing in our internships. And we really could talk about it and really have like deep conversations around white supremacy, around patriarchy, around heteronormativity, all of these things that we were seeing, while also being in a helping profession. Right?
That doesn't make any sense.
And it was just like, this is interesting, kind of like hypocritical, and, just a lot of things that were happening that we couldn't really bring up in our classes. But we, we're in community with each other, and we'd have these conversations. Right. And so, Jesse from Melanated Social Work, Josh from Melanated Social Work, and Michael from Melanated Social Work, we kind of formed kind of a friendship. And we also needed to survive. And so that kind of radicalized me. Everything with Mike Brown, the murder of Mike Brown, happened during that time too. So there were like uprisings and, different conversations around police violence and police brutality as well. And so I think a combination of all of these things, meeting these people, having these conversations, seeing the hypocrisy, seeing the stuff that was happening at my internships as well. So my second year internship, I worked in the gang unit in Dorchester. So I was stationed in the police station. And so I saw, it wasn't like I don't say a proper police station, but like a big precinct where like people were in and out. It was the gang unit. So it was a bit smaller. It was a bit more covert, but I do remember, a lot of conversations that I overheard. I do remember that in their break room, Fox News was playing nonstop. And so it was just like, I'm going to spend as little time as possible here.
Yeah. And then with the police stuff, it's not even just whites. It's Black police as well. It's the system of the whole police.
Right.
Right.
Right. So that helped, radicalize me as well. After graduating from Boston College, I moved to Philadelphia with my ex-partner, and I got into a job working with violence prevention here in Philadelphia, and some of the similar things I would see. And I think a gift and a curse of that job was that I got a chance to interact with so many different systems. And so we were helping with housing, we were helping with EBT and assistance. We were helping with education. I was going to court with clients. I was going to medical appointments with clients, and just seeing how all of these systems were super oppressive, especially to Black and brown folks, and how in a lot of these systems they use this jargon that is comfortable for their disciplines. And like I could see, in a medical appointment with my client, I could see them just like, they don't know what that stuff means, but they're also not going to ask questions because there's this almost like pride almost that you just kind of nod, or you just trust your doctor. But I would be like, oh, no. Well, what does this mean? I'd be like, is that okay with you? Are you still okay with doing that? Okay, he don't want to do that. What's the other option? Right. So I was that person. And so
in America, they didn't like that.
It was eye-opening. It was a humbling. I'm so grateful for the experience. It was one of the hardest jobs of my life, but it was that was a true social work job. And in addition to therapy and group therapy as well. And then I worked for the Anti-Violence Partnership of Philadelphia, working with co-victims of homicide. So that was interesting. And then I worked for the School District of Philadelphia, which was a shit show.
As somebody that has gone through the school system in America, especially, I tell people I feel like I'm really good at what I do because of just my lived experience. And the school allows me to bill for insurance. What are your thoughts on like for therapists that are coming out of like the school system and working in the field? Because you have a program that you do once a month with therapists teaching them skill sets, and I think that's important. I always say, like, I don't have a macro, like you have a macro mind, like melanated social, all that stuff. Like you're very macro. That's not me, but I wish I was able to like teach people in that way how to, because I hear these horror stories, and I say therapists, we're all human, and but I've worked in so many different areas of the mental health field. So I have so many experiences like being in the system. So I come from a different discipline than just going to graduate school and becoming a therapist. What would you say to like other therapists who are coming out, especially in 2022 when there's such a mental health crisis happening right now?
Yeah. I think we always have to remember that mental health is rooted in white supremacy.
Explain that for people that may not understand.
Yeah. So mental health, the whole concept of mental health was created by rich white men for rich white men. We had healers before America or the West gave us therapists. We were much more community minded. We helped each other. And so this idea of therapy is rooted in whiteness. I always like to talk about a diagnosis called drapetomania. Drapetomania is the diagnosis that slave owners would give their slaves, enslaved Africans, when they continue to try and escape slavery. And so, like this slave keeps running away. Oh, they must have drapetomania. Not that they are trying to escape the everyday trauma and like, you know what I mean, that they're facing. Let's give them a diagnosis, and that's what's wrong with them, right? Similarly, when we talk about hysteria was a diagnosis that was primarily given to women, right? Not because, and women were treated like crap. I think we have to remember, right? They were seen as property as well. And so they were being raped. They were being physically, emotionally assaulted, right? And so if you are living that life and you don't have an outlet, of course you're going to have mental health issues. Of course you're going to have trauma. But no, we're going to call it hysteria because white men can't be wrong, right? So we always have to remember that a lot of the teachings, a lot of these things are not made for us. They're not made for Black and brown folks. And so you have to question it. You have to question everything. Something that Jesse always did, and when I had classes with him, is he said, we learned a new intervention or a new skill. And he's like, and he would ask, is this accessible for low-income communities of color?
That's good.
And like, sometimes the professors would have an answer, sometimes they wouldn't. Right. And so we have to challenge interventions. We have to challenge diagnoses. We have to, we have to challenge a lot of these things because they're not made for us, a lot of them.
They're really not. And I love that, the challenging part. And when I didn't know about the slave that diagnoses, but even when I'm talking to people and there's like financial like issues happening and systemic issues happening, and I say, well, like, yeah, of course this is how you feel because look at what you're dealing with. And so unfortunately our medical system wants to put a Band-Aid and treat the symptoms, not get to the root of the problem. And a lot of the model that we were taught to abide by, unfortunately, goes by the same way. And so I think it's important, social workers, therapists, doctors, to take a holistic approach as you're treating people. And for people listening, even if your doctor's not taking a holistic approach, you take a holistic approach. Because like, even though Marvin and I are therapists, like we don't have the final say in your life, right? And I really encourage people to empower themselves with knowledge. You have phones at your fingertips. Really like empower yourself, like to take control of your life in a different way.
Yeah, I encourage folks. I'm like, one thing, one way that I kind of decolonize my own therapy is, typically clients come to us and they see us as like the expert of all things. And I immediately tell them, no, I'm not. You are the expert of your own life. I don't have any magic. You have all the skills that you need. I'm just going to assist you in bringing them out.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not leading you through this journey. We're walking side by side, and we gonna see what happens.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something else and I completely forgot. Never mind, I lost it.
It'll come back, but I think that's really good and important for people to remember. And I think, like, I know I'm very successful in what I do because of how, like, I'm very transparent. I think in school they teach you how to be very sterile, and I'm human, and so I'm clear about that, and people understand that. So empowering yourself is a powerful thing.
Yeah, I think that's important too, right? Like we're taught to zero self-disclosure, right? Like, do not say anything personal about yourself, because I don't even remember the why behind it. But I'm a relational therapist. I mean, most Black and brown folks are just relational by nature because that's just who we are.
Yeah.
Also, if you have a Black or brown client, I'm not going to trust you if I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
I'm not. I have no idea who you are. Many of us have been taught to not say anything to anybody. So we're already breaking an unwritten rule by talking to somebody. And so
that is so true.
It builds safety, right? It builds safety. I during my consultation calls, I give my clients the full rundown of born in Oakland, California, to how I got here to Philly. And also, if you have any other questions, now is the time, because we're never going to visit it again. But I'm going to give you this time right now, right? I think it's really important. Again, and it's about challenging these norms. It's about challenging what academia tells us is like the right and the wrong way to do therapy, right? Because the way that I do therapy and the way that some older white woman from Boston does therapy, I'm going to guarantee you is very
completely different. Yeah, completely different. And I love that we're having this dialogue because, there's this huge mental health crisis. 3% of the therapists in America are Black and brown. Ooh. And I, one thing I struggle with is when people say go to therapy, like especially with stars and stuff, where it's like, let's give other alternatives as well, because the reality is that we're not going to all find a therapist. What's your thoughts on that? Because it's the reason why I started my podcast back in 2018 is because I wanted people to feel empowered. I wanted them to have free access to something, and hearing other people's stories, it can be freeing and empowering. But what are your thoughts about that?
That's actually the thing that I had forgotten.
Oh, I'm lying.
And it was alternatives, right? Therapy is not the only way to heal. You do not have to go to therapy. I'm obviously biased, but
no, but it's dope that we're therapists saying it. So it's not like, you know what I mean? It's not like we're hating on therapy.
Right. Right.
So it makes it better.
Well, and I think there's a number of reasons, right? Like therapy is not like, sometimes it's intimidating for folks to sit across the room or the Zoom or the whatever from someone and telling them about things, right? Sometimes a group setting is easier. Sometimes body work is better for folks. So for folks that like Reiki, and for folks that like have more spiritualists, or for folks that maybe talk to mediums. I know a therapist right now who has a practice, and she has a medium, and she's just like, yeah, this is part of my healing, right? Getting chiropractors, getting massages, like all of this is part of your full body healing. And so something that I preach in my sessions is we're going to focus on the mind, the body, and the spirit, because that is the entire person. If we're just focusing on the mind, and we're not talking about how someone is like binge eating, or someone is working out every single day, 3 times a day, right? Like if we're not talking about that, but we're talking about mental health, we're going to miss something. Mm-hmm. Right? So all 3 of those aspects make up the whole person. And so I'm going to address all 3 of those aspects. Yeah. The last 10 minutes of my sessions I ask, what does your food intake look like? What does your water intake look like? Have you been able to connect with community? Have you been able to go outside? Tell me something that brings you joy, and that's going to bring you joy between now and next session, right? Like these things are important. Yeah. Because when I don't get sleep, Marvin is a whole different person. Yeah. I don't have to bring him out. But yeah, so it's all important. This healing. The other thing is that not everybody has access to like a good therapist. I was on back when Clubhouse was like popping. I don't know what they're doing, but like when it was popping, I was part of a group, and a woman told me that she was the only, she was one of 3 Black therapists in the state, in the Midwest. One of 3 in the state. Woo. And so obviously she's overwhelmed. Yeah. And obviously not everyone that needs a culturally competent therapist is going to get one. Yeah. And so then it's like, okay, well, how do I talk to a white conservative therapist about how Black men are being gunned down by police? Right? How do I tell someone about my sexuality? Don't even have to be a white therapist. Could be a Black Christian therapist. Right. About how how I'm going through things because of my sexuality. Am I going to be told to go to conversion therapy or pray about it? That happens. Yeah. That happens. It does.
And even the whole system of like insurance and just why is it that it's only recently with the pandemic, telehealth was even like a thing. But before that, some insurance was denying telehealth. Mm-hmm. And even the fact, like, why does it matter what state you live in? Like, there's just so much when it comes to access that prevents us from being able to have what we need. Mm-hmm. And so, like, what's your thoughts on that?
And it's intentional. It's gatekeeping, right? It's gatekeeping so that the power, like the folks in power, can remain in power. Because if we get up to a point where we're as powerful as them, that's a problem. They have to remain in power, right? They have to continue taking, getting CEUs from us. They have to continue charging hundreds of dollars for exams for us. They have to continue keeping tuitions, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, when it doesn't have to be. Especially for folks that are literally dedicating their lives to helping other people, which then helps the world. And so like, it don't make that much sense that we're having to have all these low salaries and not that much respect and having to jump through all of these hoops just to help other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little
Even
sus-
the free internship, like there's just so much when it comes to why you don't see many of us in schools and different in health centers. Is because to get to this, for me and you and I, we came from the same place. To get to where we are, it took a lot of work. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like grateful that I was blind to some of the like systems, because I honestly was. And
Mhm.
I'm so glad I was blind, because I don't know if it would have been too distracting for me to continue, because I
Mm.
just thought life was just hard, and that's just the way it was.
Mhm. Mm.
Didn't understand the systems.
Yeah. And that's intentional too. Right? It's
I know.
intentional so that you do not understand it or that you just blindly follow it and you just blindly trust it. And anytime you step outside and you question it, they're like, "Oh no, you're bad for questioning it. This is the way that we've always done it. This is the way that it is."
Yep. So we know who you are. I want to talk about the TEDx. How did that come about? Because I'm going to have a link in the show notes for where you can find his Instagram, all of his stuff in the TEDx talk. But how did that come about for you? That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. So Clubhouse again, back when it was popping.
It was popping for you.
When I tell people that networking is incredibly important, networking is so important. It's so important. So I was in a Clubhouse room. The topic was athlete mental health. There was an ex NFL player on the panel, and I was just like, I need to say something. I need to say something. And so, I talked about my experience because I did work with a couple of athletes who are professional athletes, and just talked about the experience of working with them, and kind of like how a lot of times the game isn't even causing them anxiety, it's everything outside of the sport, right? And and I also mentioned that I wanted to start a group so I do have a group for Black men that I create, a 10-week group, and intentionally said that I wanted to start a group for professional athletes. And so I think that's when his name is Reggie Walker, his ears kind of perked up. And so after that Clubhouse call, he messaged me on Instagram and just like said, "Hey, do you want to have a conversation? I want to learn more about your work." And I was just like, "Of course." So we, talked, and he was saying so he also did a TEDx talk, but he did his from home because of the pandemic. And so we were talking, he's like, "Well, I know the person who runs TEDx Wilmington. Do you want me to connect y'all?" And I said, "Okay." And so then me and him got on a call, similarly just told him about my work, my experience, what I'm doing. And maybe less than a week later, he's like, "Yeah, I want to officially invite you as a speaker."
Yo.
Are you sure?
Listen to us Black people. We can't even. It's like, are you sure? Like,
right. Like, are you? Because there was some imposter stuff. I was just like, am I good enough? Because there'd be some real celebrities like doing TEDx.
Marvin, you're dope.
And so I was just like, I guess we're doing this.
Wow.
So that's how it started. And then obviously I had to think of a topic. And so, along with kind of my personal journey, the two biggest things that gave me the most shame were the queerness, which was already I was already kind of doing work around, started to really embrace it. But the other thing was the thing that very few people knew about. And that was in 2015 that I was diagnosed with HIV. And so that was the actual thing I was going to take to the grave.
So what made you decide to do it on TEDx?
So that was one. So I was thinking about it, and I said, whatever I talk about, it has to be something that is a game changer. I don't do basic things. I don't do regular things. That's not my style. And so I'm like, all right, it has to be a game changer. What is a thing that's going to be impactful? It's going to be eye opening. I had it in my brain, but I didn't want to like bring it to the forefront. And I was just like, what if I should, tell this story? And I struggled with whether or not I actually wanted to tell the story because it is the most vulnerable that I've ever been publicly.
Yeah.
And there's still stigma, right, around queerness and around HIV.
Yeah.
And so I had to really reflect. I talked to my therapist. I talked to folks in my village about it, and I kind of thought, like, you know what? I'm always preaching to my clients and to followers that we need to be our authentic selves. We need to practice self-love. We need to practice radical self-love. And I was just like, I'm going to do this. And so one random Sunday, and Sundays are my self-care day. So I usually do nothing on Sundays.
Nice.
One random Sunday, probably about 9 a.m., I had this energy in me and I was just like, I got to get this out. And so I just started typing for probably 45 minutes to an hour. I had no idea how long it was. I had no idea, like, time-wise, if I read it, how long it was going to be. So I typed it and then I like put it away for like a month. I didn't look at it for like a month.
Had you had the date for the TEDx already by that point?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I had like 6 months or something between.
Oh, okay. So you had time.
I had a lot of time. And so that was the thing too. It was like, it's 6 months from now. It's fine. I don't have to start on it now. So, I realized that it's like 2 months away and I'm like, crap, I got to revisit this. So then I had, a couple folks, from my village look at it, edit it. And it ended up being about 17 minutes long and the max is 18 minutes for it. And so I'm just like,
oh, that's crazy.
And so I'm like, cool, okay, I got it down. I'm like, I have to memorize this. I was like, how am I going to do this? Like, I can't remember what I had for dinner last night. So one of the guys from my group, he's an actor, and he reached out. He was like, hey, and I'm pretty vulnerable with my group as well. Okay. He said, if you need some tips on how to memorize some things, like, I got you. And I was like, bet. Shout out to Khalif if you're listening to this. So I had a couple of meetings with him. He was like super encouraging. The day before, I was just like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can remember this. And so one of the things that he had me do was to record myself on my laptop and listen back. And so then I thought to myself, well, why don't I get like one of those like tiny earpiece, like Bluetooth headphones, put it in one ear. And while I'm on stage, I basically just listen to myself and repeat what I'm saying. And so I was just like, that could work. And so like, that was my plan. I emailed the organizer about it and told him about it. I got no response. So I was like hella nervous about it. Because I was like, well, what if, the microphone and like there's feedback with the speakers. So that was like a real fear for me. And I didn't even know if it was going to be okay until literally before I got up there. And so my operations manager was in the crowd, along with a bunch of my family and friends who had come out to support me. And he had my phone and he pressed play, and then we went. And I was like, all right, we going. And then there's this feedback from the speaker coming. I'm just like, shit. And so like I look at the guy and I look at like another person, and then they stop. They stop everything. I'm like, oh crap, because it's still going in my ear. And so they hand me a mic. I wasn't supposed to have a physical mic. They hand me that mic. So somehow, I don't know if it was a connection between me and Dre, but he just knew when to start it over and press play at like the perfect time. And then I just started it right back over. And it went incredibly well. It was nice too, because I know that if I was trying to remember something and then looking out in the audience and then seeing my friends and family, either I would have like lost my place or I would have just started getting emotional. And so it was nice that I just had to focus on me in my ear, you know? Yeah, so then, it ended. Apparently I got a standing ovation. I did not, because I went right onto this side room and I just let it all out. Just all the emotion was out. And I just needed to like just have that release. But it was so nice to have my community there. Because like these are the folks that like most, if not all of them, know this story. And so to have them there to support me during something that was that important and that vulnerable and that freeing and liberating for me was just really special.
That's so awesome. To go from so much masculinity, don't cry, don't be vulnerable, to being able to, it's freeing. And I know, and I just want to be clear that that the road to becoming free mentally is really long and challenging, emotional roller coaster. So I know it's not easy, but there is so much more freedom when you can just live your life. And it's harder to live with the mask on. Think about having a bunch of clothes on in the summertime, and you just want to be free. Like, it's a lot. You learn to just live uncomfortable, but that's not really living; it's surviving. Like being able to just even, it's not even about telling the world on TEDx, right? I think people like Marvin and I were just like on platforms, and we're very transparent. So I'm not saying people have to be on a platform, but I mean just with yourself. Like that vulnerability with yourself is so important.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I started my group for Black men, is because we are the worst at opening up. We are the worst at being vulnerable. And what happens is we start to suffer in silence. And like, why? Why are we suffering in silence? And so part of the reason I started it was so that Black men could see, hey, I'm Black. I'm a Black man. You're a Black man. We're dealing with the same stuff. I see you, you see me, and now we're not hiding from it. Now we're supporting each other. Now we're giving each other skills and tips and positive words to keep going. And it's not going to be that bad for long. And that's the beauty of those groups. And those are Black men from all walks of life. Queer, trans man was in my last group. And it's all love and it's all support.
And just having other people that look like you say you're not alone is like this freeing and it's powerful. And so I'm just glad that there's people like you on this earth to let people know that, because not only do you suffer in silence, but your body breaks down. We're not supposed to live this way. This is not the way we were designed to live. And the more, people understand that, the less they suffer. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's such a freeing experience, that group too. Yeah.
Oh, good. And the other thing you were in, the Smithsonian, tell people about that. And then there's links to that too, where people can watch that. I don't want to tell you about the TEDx. It was so good and so vulnerable. It's only 17 minutes, but we're going to have a link for that. But it's really good. But tell people about that.
Thank you. Thank you. So the Smithsonian channel thing came about. Just one of my followers works for Viacom, and she emailed me and she's like, hey, there's this segment, from the Smithsonian channel called Cycle Breakers, and we think you'd be great for it. And so I met with a couple of people. I got in touch with the producer. They're like, all right, in a couple of weeks, we're gonna come to Philly and we're gonna film you doing some of these things. Wow. And I was just like, what? and so yeah, it was a humbling experience. It was challenging day one, just because like a lot of things were moving, and I like to very much be in control of things, and I felt like I wasn't, but it was all good. It worked itself out. So it was a crew of about maybe 7 or 8 people. They had their big ass lights and cameras and like all of these things, and I'm just like,
oh my God,
this is really happening. And so they filmed me and two of the folks from Radical Therapy Center at our case consultation. They filmed me running an in-person group. They did kind of a one-on-one interview with me, and then they also filmed me and the guys from Melanated Social Work doing a piece of the podcast, and just really highlighting the work that I'm doing, and it was just so beautifully done. Like I look back and I'm just like, damn, they did a really good. Like I look important. I'm like I am important. I know that, but I'm just like no, but I look important. Yeah, and so it was. Oh, and it's part of Oprah's the Color of Care documentary, and it's like a added piece to it. So it's cycle break. It's called Cycle Breakers. Apparently, there's going to be more than just me. So every month, from what I was told, a new cycle breaker will be featured. So I was one of them. And that documentary is highlighting the racism and anti-Blackness that happens in the medical and mental health fields.
Yeah, nice.
Cycle breaker are the folks that are fighting against that and trying to break that cycle.
You are a cycle breaker. Shout out to the city here supervisor who told you had a voice, man.
Come on, Sasha.
Like that's dope. You know, people can speak life into you.
Absolutely.
And between that and the person in California who said you would be a good social worker, like luckily you listen to those voices and they and not the other experiences. Because where you are now is truly amazing. And you know, your story, I want people to know that regardless of where you came from or what you were told, there's always room for change. It's not an easy road, but it's a road where you'll be more in control. And I think a lot of people let our trauma and experiences be the lens of our life. And if we can get from under that, we actually see the power that we have.
Right. I also want to just echo, and you've said it a couple times, but this is not an easy road. This was not an easy road at all. I can smile about it. I can laugh about it now, but the number of times that I have been like crying on my bed, the number of times that I've been depressed and still have to show up for clients, the number of times that I'm just like, that I was like, you know what? Maybe it's easier if I wasn't alive, right? Like a lot of that happened, and it's very real. And I'm not saying that today it's like the easiest, because sometimes some negative emotions still pop up. And so I want to be clear about that. I'm not like healed. I'm not at like this enlightened, finished state. I'm just significantly better than what I was before.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if we ever stop. I think we're always like healing, and I mean that's one of the things I love about you and your platform is that, you know, sometimes people could be very motivating, but not talk about the realities of how they got to where they got to.
Yeah.
And I never want to paint a picture for my audience that you just do this and everything's fine. It's like that's a whole shock to your body. You're talking about healing. Your system is used to being in shit. And you want to not be in shit anymore. It's like your system is like, what are we doing?
Yep.
So I think, like, you know, the same way the doctor will tell you the stages of your leg healing and the pain that you're going to go through, so you're expecting it. I want to do that for people as they're working through some of the struggles that they have, so that they don't stop. People stop because it's like, this is hard. This don't. Celeste was like saying, don't be Celeste, and Celeste told you the truth. I don't want nobody to ever claim that I ain't telling what the real deal was.
Same. I've been using this metaphor with my clients around healing, because, you know, people get it when you connect it to like physical health, right?
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I always use this example of like, you know, say there's a piece of like glass stuck in your hand, right? And so you can cut off that top layer of glass, right? And then your skin will heal over it.
Yeah.
But when you touch it, it's still gonna hurt.
Yes.
You're gonna feel it. Right. And so it's not until you dig in, and I often think about therapy like it's surgery, right? It's not until you get all of it out and then you heal over it. And then, okay, now I can finally start to heal.
Yeah.
And a lot of us need to do that mental surgery and like get all of that stuff out.
It's good. And sometimes the glass be traveling a little bit, may mess up a few things. So like it might take a little longer. You know what I'm trying to say? But dang, that's a good analogy. Y'all know my audience know I'm good for taking somebody's analogy, but I'm gonna always quote you. I was like, Marvin was like, yeah, he told this dope analogy, so I love it. That's dope. Before you go, can you let people know like how do you take care of yourself? Like what's your routine looks like?
Yes. I love this question because I love talking about self-care.
He does like random like cooks and talks and
yeah. So cooking is actually self-care for me. I love to cook. It's really therapeutic, like to cook and to like just have some music on. It's really nice when I have the energy for it, obviously. I love to go to the gym. I love to work out. It's more for stress for me. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I love how my body looks too after I work out, but but it's more, you know, again, that energy, right? You have this negative or this super heavy energy and you need to get it out. And that's one of those ways, right? Where I go, there's also a kind of a side room that has like the bags that you can kick and punch. And some folks don't know this. I used to do martial arts when I was younger. And so like it's so nice to just get back into that and to release some of that and to pretend that bag is like Donald Trump or a white supremacist. This bag is white supremacy. I'm about to, mess it up. Being the beach, like I just took a trip to Orlando a little while ago to visit a friend and went to 2 different beaches and it was just so great. I love being near water. And then therapy. I have my therapist every single Friday. And when he's late, I'm like, to talk about today, sir. Those are some of the ways.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. This was
community. I always have to add community.
Community, like, it's huge.
With my people, venting to them, letting them vent to me, being in spaces with them, whether it's happy hours or just like hanging out or watching TV or whatever that is. So community, I'm always going to preach to.
Nice. This is good. This was awesome. I knew this was going to be great. I love your energy. I just love your passion for the people. I love when you speak, people listen, and you definitely have an authority over your life. So I'm just glad that you're walking in your purpose because you're definitely in your purpose. This was okay for you? Did I do okay with you?
You did fantastic.
Thank you. Do you have any last words for the people? Where they can find you?
Yes. If you want to find me, you can go. Instagram is probably where I post all of the things. You can find me at M as in Marvin. Toliver, TOLIVER _LCSW. I'm also on Twitter with the same handle. I'm not gonna lie to y'all though, don't follow me on Twitter. I don't be on there that much. You can also go to my website, www.marvintoliver.com if you want therapy from me, if you want to book me for any consultations, for any speaking gigs. I have trainings and whatnot as well. You can find my TEDx Talk and the Smithsonian segment both on YouTube. I think you can just search my name. That's something I'm kind of proud of, is that like you can just search my name and stuff comes up. I'm like, okay, like I'm making
Google me, baby.
And then if you want to email me, you can email me actually, I'm not gonna do that. Go through the website, send me a message.
Thank you.